Good afternoon. Welcome to the Elliott Bay Book Company. I want to thank everybody for coming to today's author event. This afternoon we are very pleased to welcome Roland Kelts to the store. Roland is a lecturer at the University of Tokyo and a co-editor of the New York-based literary journal A Public Space. His articles, essays, and stories have been published in Zoetrope, Playboy, Salon, The Village Voice, Newsday, Vogue, and the Japan Times, among others. He has also lectured at New York University, Rutgers, and Barnard College. Roland's first novel, Access, will be published next year. This afternoon, Roland is here with his book, Japanamerica, How Japanese Culture Has Invaded the U.S. Following the Q&A, books will be on sale, and I'm sure Roland will sign your books as well. So now, please help me in welcoming Roland Kelts.
Thank you very much, and I just want to say it's really an honor to be reading at this bookstore. Elliott Bay is one of the best bookstores in America, and maybe in terms of English language books, one of the best in the world. So it's really great to be here. I've just spent the weekend at SakuraCon, the amazing anime festival here in Seattle, and it's kind of extraordinary, even having written a book about the expansive nature of Japanese popular culture and cuisine and sensibilities in Japan in the 21st century in particular, to come face to face with the players and quite literally performers in that engagement. Not only the number of folks who flew over from Japan to appear at SakuraCon, there was quite a contingent of bands, cosplay types, people dressed up in costume, and anime producers, manga writers, artists, and so on, who flew over from Japan, many of whom cannot speak English very well, and yet they're over here to come face to face with American fans and fandom. And the other thing that's extraordinary for me to see, since I tend to spend most of the year in Tokyo, because I'm lecturing at the University of Tokyo, is to see the way costume play or cosplay manifests in America. It's very, very different from Japan. In the United States, you sometimes see fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters all dressed up as their favorite characters in Japanese animation or anime. And in Japan, it's usually only, frankly, it's usually only young women who are dressed up in costume, and then men with large cameras taking pictures of them. Here at SakuraCon, there were certainly lots of people taking photographs, but the range of folks dressed up in costume was very diverse. There were just, as I say, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, crossing racial lines, ethnic lines, and gender lines. And to add to that, to see young men, teenage boys, dressed up quite earnestly as female anime characters or female manga characters, without being self-conscious about it, without seeming to have any sense of discomfort with what they were doing. These young men would walk out to Starbucks down the street from the convention center in the same costume, calmly talking with their friends about, Monday's opening game for the baseball team, etc. I mean, they're really comfortable wearing these costumes, and that's amazing for me to see. I'm just going to start by just explaining a little bit about the genesis of this book, Japanamerica. My mother is Japanese, and my father is American. He's actually of Scottish and German descent. And my parents met in Puerto Rico when my father was on a research grant. He's a marine biologist, and my mother was on a university tour. She went to a Japanese university and received a Rotary Club fellowship. So I grew up with at least a sense of both cultures, two cultures that were not only enemies during the war, but are very far apart physically, geographically, but also culturally. And as a child attending kindergarten in Japan, I really felt that gap immensely. In fact, while I have fond memories of being a 5-year-old in northern Japan, my mother claims I was crying all the time, that I was miserable, probably because of the language gap. My mother did not raise me in Japanese and suddenly plunked me into a school where no one spoke English, hence the trauma. But I wound up going back and forth between the two countries and cultures, and started writing my writing life in New York City, and wound up going back to Japan on a grant and a commission for Francis and Sofia Coppola's company, which is called Zoetrope. And they commissioned me to write a treatment for a film, a short novella. And that's what kind of pushed me to Japan as a writer. And while I was in Japan, I started writing about all these colorful figures in the arts in Japan, most particularly novelist Haruki Murakami, whom I've met on several occasions and written about on a number of occasions. But I was never an otaku, which is sort of a crazed fan of Japanese animation or manga books. But even though I was aware of them, one can't really visit Japan without being aware of these art forms. So the publisher, Palgrave Macmillan, came to me in 2004, 2005, and they actually commissioned this book. And the reason is that they had read my work on a variety of artists in Japan and my fiction, and they wanted a storyteller who could communicate to American readers, in particular English language readers, what was going on in Japan and what was going on in the United States with this explosion of interest in Japan's contemporary culture. So when I went to do the research one does before one sits down to write a book, I discovered that there were numerous books by passionate fans of Japanese pop culture written for other passionate fans of Japanese pop culture. So that there were so many inside references and arguments and debates referred to that one would become quite lost in the first 25 pages or so unless one had seen several hundred DVDs or videotapes of this material. And the other type of book I found was a sort of academic treatise on this subject, written by folks, actually many of whom I interviewed from my book, who were deconstructing, either culturally deconstructing or aesthetically deconstructing what one sees on the screen or in the pages of a manga book. So, but written in academic lingo and so on, which is, again, some of them quite good studies, but a bit dense for someone who just wanted a taste and an understanding of what was going on. So I embarked on this project, and the title came about rather early in the process because of a central metaphor I wound up using in the book, which is the Mobius strip, or the Mebius strip, depending on one's pronunciation. The 19th century mathematical conceptual device, which is essentially a strip of paper that you clip and then reattach and twist so that you can no longer tell which side is up or which side is which. And the reason that metaphor arose was that among the first encounters I had was with the folks of Tezuka Productions. Osamu Tezuka, the creator of Astro Boy, one of the earliest imports from Japan, is considered the father of Japanese animation and manga, anime and manga. And Tezuka, who was working in the immediate post-war years, was such a fan of Walt Disney's work that he allegedly viewed Bambi in the cinema over 80 times. This was his claim.